St. Patrick's Day is upon us. Many of you, like me, will be out celebrating with my Irish buddies. So to save our countertops and our tables, we're going to use one of these. If you want one of these, watch this video and we'll show you how to make one of these. Who doesn't love a Shamrock coaster? I think everybody does, especially this time of year when we're celebrating the green holiday, St. Patrick's Day. So if you're like us, we're going to have some friends over, we're going to eat some corned beef and cabbage, we're going to drink some beverages, and I'm sure people are going to put that down on the table or the countertop. To protect those tabletop countertops, we need one of these, the Shamrock coaster. Let's go to Carbide Create. Let's design what this is going to look like in the software, and then we'll cut it out on the CNC. And then what we'll do is we'll pour in some epoxy and we'll sand everything, and then we'll finish it off, and then you'll have one of these for yourself. An overview of what we're going to do here is first we're going to set up the job for the CNC. Then we're going to import an image of a Shamrock. We're going to manipulate that image just a little bit. In the design phase, we're going to create any other geometry we need for our project, and then finally we're going to create all the tool paths for the CNC to be able to cut out our Shamrock. So step one is job setup. What we do there is we click on the background and we go up to the gear icon and we set in the parameters for our stock size. In our case, our stock size happens to be 4 11/16 wide, which is 4.6875. The height or the length is 10 inches, which is already in there. The thickness as measured by our calipers is 13/16, which is 0.8125. Zero height is going to be at the top. Tool path is going to be lower left. Material is, I guess it's a hardwood. I think we're using Paduke today. And retract height is 1/4 of an inch. We're all set there. Step two is to import the image. In our case, we have an image of a Shamrock that we pulled down off of, I believe it was Etsy. We bought it for like $1. Here is that image. It's just an SVG file. What we're going to do is we're going to import that into our Carbide Create. And the way we do that, we go here to import. Go to pull down, we click on Shamrock, and we hit open. And here's our Shamrock. Next, what we need to do is need to size this appropriately so it'll fit onto our stock the way we'd like it to. So here I've taken our Shamrock and I've copied it to both spots because we're going to cut out 2 Shamrocks on this piece. And in this case, what I've done is I've offset by 1/4 inch the interior of the Shamrock, because this one's going to be what we're calling epoxy outline. So in between these 2 lines is going to be epoxy. The rest is going to be wood. Up here, what we're doing is we're going to cut out the whole interior, and we're going to fill that just straight up with epoxy. So what I've also added is these 2 squares, which are basically the outline of our coaster. They're both 4.625 inches in both dimensions, square. Next step is to create all the tool paths for our designs. So essentially I've created all, it looks like 10 different tool paths we're going to need to do all the cutouts. So there's 1/4 inch bit paths, there's 1/8 inch bit paths, there's going to be 9° V to do chamfers, and then there's going to be McFly. Potentially, as we pour in the epoxy into our project, it may bubble over just a little bit, in which case we'll have to flatten it. So why don't we start with the first 1/4 inch path. So the C1s are Shamrock top, C2s are Shamrock bottoms. So let's enable that first one. So we enable it. We can see this is the path the 1/4 inch bit is going to cut out. So let's see what our parameters are. We're using the Amana 46202K 1/4 inch spiral. Step over is half of that, which is 0.125. Depth per pass is 1/10 of an inch. Plunge rate's 20, feed rate's 50. You could go faster, but for me, these seem to work pretty well. So hit OK on that. Start depth is going to be the top of the stock. Max depth is going to be 2/10 down. We don't need ramping or rest machining at this point. Here are our cuts. Cut 1-1, toolpath 1/4. Okay, if we take a quick peek at that, let's set this in beach. We can see this is what it's going to cut out. Almost nothing if actually, well, we're not showing those yet, so we'll see. Then what I've done is I've duplicated this path to create the second path, which is a slightly, it's a cleaning path basically. So it cleans up the cuts. Same bit, I've halved the step over and the depth per pass. Same plunge rate, same feed rate. We're going from 0 down to 0.22. I can probably start lower. Maybe I should. Let me just drop that in there. Start that at 20.2 and then go down 0.22 and we hit OK. Okay, so you see 3 minutes for the rough and 3 minutes for the fine. Basically doing the same thing, just cutting a whole lot less. Now for C2, which is down here, there's going to be this one, the second Shamrock. Let's enable that. You can see all it's cutting is just this little piece here. It's too tight for that bit to get into all of these turns. I probably should have made it wider, but I didn't. And then to do the finish path for it, let's enable that also. Same thing, it's going to just pop right here and just do that. That's the extent of all of our 1/4 inch bit paths. So you can see this is all that we're getting cut out. Okay, let's hide the simulation there. And let's hide that. Now let's go to 1/8 inch, the 1/8 inch path. Let's enable that. So you can see a little bit down here got cut. Here, let me disable those. You can see this got cut, and that's it. Well, we're only talking about this for a Shamrock. And for that, what we're using is the 102 bit, a 1/8 inch bit. It stepped over at 0.062, depth per pass 0.050, 20 plunge rate and 50 feed rate. Now let's change that up though. Instead of 102, let's use the Amana 1/8, which is a 46200K. Let's select that. Whoops. And let's just look, same feed rates. Okay, hold on. Plunge rate's 70, we're going to lower it to 20. And feed rate, we're going to have it also to 50. So I'm going to say okay with that. So that's all it's going to cut out, that little bit and this stem. So now let's enable the cleanup cut. Again, you can see that that's where it was. Let's change the default bit to the Amana again. 1/8 inch. I'll select it. We're just going to slow it down both from a depth perspective and from a feed rate perspective. Hit OK. Again, I don't think we need to start at 0. We can start at 0.2 because that's what the previous bit did. And you can see we have rest machining set, so it knows the previous bit was 0.25. So it's only cutting out what remains. Let's hit OK. And we're good there. Now for our second Shamrock, let's enable that path. You can see now we're doing a whole lot more. So for that one, we're using a 46200 K, which is the Amana 1/8, 0.062, depth per pass 0.05, plunge rate's 20, feed rate's 50. Starting from the top, going down to 0.2. We know the previous bit did 1/4 inch, it was 1/4 inch path, but really didn't cut much, so this is really going to cut most of it. Now we're doing the rough pass, so let's enable that, and same bit. We've halved the step over, we've halved the depth per pass, because it's 0.05 before, now it's 0.25. Plunge rate, feed rate, same, 20 and 50. We're going to start this at 0.2. Rest machining, we knew we had the bit before, even though it didn't cut much of anything out. Hit OK. And looks like we're good to go. Let's see what it looks like in the simulation. just for that. That's all we're going to be cutting with the 1/8 inch bit. Now if we enable both and run the simulation, you can see our clover leaves are completely cut out. Alright, let's save all of our tool paths that we care about, which are going to be these first two ones. And let's get to the CNC and start cutting. Okay, here we are, we're at the CNC. We have our piece of stock. What we're going to do is we're going to try the old super glue and tape method. Put the super glue right here. And we're going to spray the accelerator right here. And to add just a little bit of extra clamping power, we're going to use these little clamps. If I can get them to fit. Here we go. Between the tape, super glue, and these clamps, we should be in good spot. Next, we're going to kick off the CNC. Okay, now we're going to go to the 1/8 inch bit. Let's see how we did. That looks really nice and clean. I'm touching in here, very smooth. Very nice. All right, we're centered. Centered. That's good. Yep. All right, so we're good. So we have a level epoxy table thingy. Next thing I'm going to do is we've got total boat, the fast hardener, and the resin. Basically, it's one pump each into here. For the mixture, we're going to try to fill this up about halfway or so. I think that's what I'll need for both pieces. And we're using this mica powder in brilliant green for our color. That was picked by the boss. So let's see how this works. Now, one thing, keep in mind, I just opened these. When you put the pump in the smaller quart hardener over here, pump it a little bit as you're putting it in, because I got an overflow because there wasn't enough space inside the bottle to make that happen. Now I might need more than one pump to get this thing to prime itself, but we'll see what happens. And let me just grab my lumber. Okay, we blew these off with the compressor. We're going to fill it in and see how this goes. All right, there's one. Six. That should be more than enough. Same thing with the little guy here. Nothing. One. Six. I think we overdid it there a little bit. All right, now let's put in our pigment. We also have this very cheap spinny thing to stir things up, hopefully to get rid of some of the bubbles. But I'm thinking not so much. There's lots of bubbles in there right now. We'll have to get the heat gun at it a little bit. Give two little scoops full. Let's see what happens here. Quick spin around, give you a little view in here. And this is what it looks like on this side. Spinner, see if it makes a difference. Let's see which direction. Not that it matters. So here we go. We've got a minute or two of mixing here. Now I'm going to pour this in first into the big clover leaves and then into the little clover leaves. This is the cutouts, and these are just the outlines. That's good. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to let this cure, which I'll have to read to see how long it's going to take. I think it's going to take at least 24 hours. Here we have our epoxy inlays. This is probably about 12 to 18 hours later. I know it says to full cure is approximately 2 days, but I think it's hard enough to actually just shear off just the top on the CNC just to get everything nice and flat. So we're going to do that, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the old tape and super glue method to attach everything to the CNC. Alright, let's see how we did. Okay, so here are the two pieces. This is the first one we cut where we stepped down from 0.01 to 0.025 to 0.05. This is one where we went straight to 0.05. As you can see here, we got a couple little pinholes all the way around. I'm going to try to fill that in with little super glue there. Now for the super glue application, this time we're going to use thin. I'm just going to fill in the holes. If necessary, I'll put on some accelerator, but hopefully we'll just pour it in and see what happens. So, yeah, I'm going to try putting a little accelerator on. Wow, look at that foam. Ooh. Pretty hot there too. Okay, we're going to hit it with the drum sander and see what we can do. Clean this up. You know, every now and again, you run into a project that no matter what you do, you keep making mistakes. And I figured these little coasters, be nice and easy. I mean, how hard is it to make a coaster? Cut it out, fill it in with epoxy, sand, finish, and you're done. So I'll show you some of the mistakes here. Came out very nice, except for the fact that it's cracked and cracked. These were too deep. This one a little less deep, still nonetheless cracked and unusable. Note to self, make sure you read the directions on the back of your epoxy bottles. Make sure you know what the depth is. And for this fast hardener, the max depth I believe is about 1/8. These were almost 4/10, so almost a 1/2 inch. So I think I have 3 to 4 times max depth, which is why those cracked. So that was that. Here we have another one, a little less depth, but for some reason it was still too deep, and you can see it foamed. It foamed. I got pretty hot, so again I think I was a little too deep on this one. So it didn't come out. It's got cracks. Although this one, if I can salvage it somehow, I might try to salvage this little clover. See what happens. Here, this one came out all right. The problem was I used a different epoxy. I didn't use Total Boat. I used just some generic epoxy off of Amazon, and the dyes that came with it are actually very light. So although I squeeze a whole lot of green in there, you can barely see this. You can see right through, which is all right, but not quite the look I was going for. So this may be another salvageable one. Here are the final versions of this. Now what you may not be able to see, again, channel my inner Vanna. Whoop. As you can see, there's like little tiny holes, little pinholes all over. So what I'm going to try to do is fill it in with a little wipe on, see if that'll fill the holes and take care of the issue. So in preparation for this, what I've done so far is I've sanded down to 400, and I used a little bit of a buffing sponge with some compound to buff it out. So it's very, very smooth, but it's not very clear. And this one, you wouldn't be able to see it anyway. So this one actually came out a little bit clearer, but when you wet it down, it's okay. Although you can see there's like little tiny holes in there. Let's see if they get covered up somehow. So let's wipe on some poly, see if that saves us. If not, then it is what it is. We just chalk this up as one of those projects that failed. Happens. Here we are the next day, and several coats of polyurethane spray later. I know originally I started out with the Watco wipe-on poly. It was going on very nicely, but it wasn't going on thick enough to cover some of the mistakes we had made. And that was the pinholes that were inside the face of the epoxy. The reason we had pinholes in the face of the epoxy was because we didn't follow the epoxy directions. Note to self, read the directions on your bottle before you use it. That epoxy, deepest pour is 1/8 of an inch, which is basically 0.125. We pour this 0.4, so 3 times or more deeper than it was supposed to. So what did it do? Overheated, caused some gaps, caused some bubbles, and all of those translated into pinholes on this version, and breakage and otherwise on this version. So you know what? You live and you learn. So I guess how you can judge yourself, I guess you can judge how good a woodworker you are on A, how few mistakes you make, because everybody's going to make mistakes, and B is how do you recover from that. So you know what? Polyurethane, a couple extra coats, and you know what? Cleaned everything up. Not good enough to sell, but good enough to use at home and hand out. So that came out nice. Here's the other version. And then we have these other versions that I'm going to put in mineral oil. These are the clear or opaque-ish version of the coasters. So we'll see how those come out. So if you like what you saw here, you learned something new, please like, subscribe, and watch our next video. See you then.